Hi, I'm Michael Hartman.
I'm Naomi Liu.
And I'm Mike Rizzo. And this is OpsCast,
a podcast for marketing ops pros
and RevOps pros.
Created by the Mo Pros, the #1 community for marketing operations professionals.
Tune in to each episode as we chat with real professionals to help elevate you in your marketing operations career.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com, powered by the Mo Pros out there. I am your host, Michael Hartman, joined today by Mike Rizzo.
I like the delayed sort of like, who is it? Who's going to be on every time you do this? It's great.
Well, the last few have been no one. So,
yeah.
I try to little surprise. We're now, we're recording this early October, which means Mopspalooza is like a month away, give or take.
Yeah, 4 weeks. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Tell me
awesome. All right. Well, joining us today is Adrianna Shukla. She is currently Director of Demand Generation at Snowplow. Before joining Snowplow, Adrianna held general marketing, digital marketing, and demand generation leadership roles at multiple different companies. She started her career in web marketing and e-commerce. She focuses on building bridges between technical and non-technical realms to formulate cohesive business and marketing strategies. Adrianna, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, we already, for our listeners, we always have a little chat beforehand. We all talked about how different the weather is in our different locations. So Adrianna, I think Adrianna's the winner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she's in a more moderate climate.
Mild climate. Yeah.
Now, let's give it a couple months and that may change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, true.
Let's hope it's a mild winter for us.
Yeah, we'll hope so. All right. Well, this should be a fun, interesting conversation. I had my assertion, my viewpoint is that marketers and marketing operations professionals have created massive amounts of data for their organizations that goes mostly untapped. So to me, there's a big miss for most marketing ops teams and professionals. And we can have all the marketing analytics tools in the world, but without the operational backbone to collect, organize, contextualize that data, it's kind of meaningless. So, Adrianna, you work at a company that kind of does some of this stuff at Snowplow. What is your take on this? Right? What role do you think marketing operations teams should have on this world of data and corralling it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I 100% agree. We have tons of access to
Okay, we can just stop there. No, I'm just... I like it.
There's your answer. I think the real challenge is around the accuracy and making it actionable. I can say firsthand, it's, extremely vital that you have like that solid operational backbone. It's that foundation really. Without the foundation, you can have all the tools in the world, but ultimately the data you're looking at is garbage. We've had all of it happen where you have like Google Analytics, for instance, and we look at a number and it seems like it's ridiculously inflated and you're like, why? What's going on? Or you look at a different platform and you're like, this number is off. You just know it, and so it's like, but why? And marketing operation teams, we're left to be the ones that just say the why, what's going on here, and so, we as marketing operation professionals, and I have some folks on my team that focus on this. We need to focus on like, what's the source of that data collection? What are you using to collect that data, to make sure that, that first touch point of when somebody actually touches the data and then that funnels into something, that point of collection is accurate. And then working with other teams, to make sure that all the things that you're collecting are directly tied to those business outcomes. Like, what is the reason that you're collecting that data? What is the end result that you're looking for? Because ultimately, like, everybody wants to just collect everything. It's like, I want to collect everything. I want to know everything that everybody's doing at all times, but ultimately, like, you have to figure out what you're trying to solve for. Like, what are you trying to do with that data? And so I find that to be one of the more difficult things for me is like, I always am asking, well, why are we collecting that? Like, what are we going to do with that? What do we want? What's the end result that we want from that? Because ultimately, like, what I find is that we set up all this like collection of data And then ultimately when we go to action it or go to make it actionable, it's like, well, it's not in the format that I want. It's not, it's not actionable. It's like, oh, this is great. I have all this data, but I can't actually separate it out or segment it or those types of things. So it's like, what do I do with this?
It's for, I think for our listeners, this is, regardless of where you are in your career, you probably, even in your first year in marketing operations, you're going to like rapidly come up against like the nerdy nuance of what we're talking about here, right? Like, Adrianna, you're saying, hey, begin with the end in mind, right? Is ultimately your point, it sounds like, right? And what do you want to do with this at the end of the day? Because guess what? If you want to do cohort analysis on a plain text field data point that you didn't set up properly,
right,
the standardization of that plain text field is just not going to be easy to analyze, right? And so by asking the questions up front, what do you want to do? Begin with the end in mind. How are we meant to try to understand what it is that we're looking to, measure here? It actually influences the literal types of fields and data properties that you're creating. Multi-choice, single options, Booleans for yes, no's, and sometimes plain text, right?
Oh, right.
And so that it's for the non-marketing ops listeners and RevOps listeners, if you're an executive, a CEO that doesn't really get into the weeds of this stuff, it's that layer of nerdy detail. Those are the reasons why we're asking the question. It's not that we're trying to tell you to not do the thing that you want to do. It's that if we don't set this up the right way, you're going to be pissed when we can't generate the report for you.
Right.
No, that's like, I know, a couple of things I want to follow up on, but I know from an experience I had, I was working at a company where we had Marketo and Salesforce. Salesforce had been around a lot longer, and we started monitoring the amount of updates were happening to data fields on the contact records in Marketo, and also noticed this huge spike, every day, these large volumes, way more than we actually had records in the database. So things were being updated multiple times every day on two fields that stood out: country and state, or country and state or region, whatever. I started trying to dig into why. Well, what it was is the two systems had different sets of values in the way they were tracking it. So a record would go from Marketo to Salesforce. Salesforce would normalize it, right, in quotes. It sent it back to Marketo, which would then normalize. It was this continuous loop that was happening. And I was like, how did we end up there? Because I inherited all this stuff, right? And so that's the kind of example of things, though, that can make this stuff hard to wrangle, right?
Yeah, and if you have different teams, working on those different systems, you can also have them contradicting each other. So they go in this infinite loop where, you're saying one thing for a value and the other team is saying another thing for a value, and they're just contradicting and overwriting each other back and forth,
Yeah, that is exactly what was happening. So I want to pick up on one thing. You talked about early on that, the importance of accuracy of data. So I'm going to say something I'd like you to respond. So I don't believe, especially in the B2B world, that there can be true, quote, accuracy, or things are, quote, right. And I think that a lot of that has to do with just the typically lack of controls, unlike say financial data where there's lots of controls, it's very sort of rigid. And there's standards that go across all industries almost globally, right? It's not the way it is in B2B marketing and sales data. So I'm not saying there's not a way to find accuracy, but in general, I don't know that you should have an expectation. If there isn't 100% accuracy, you won't reach it. Do you tend to think that's also the case, or tell me I'm wrong?
We're always trying to get the closest we can to accuracy, right? And I do agree that you can't get 100%. We obviously want to get to 100%. Everybody's like, we need, especially executives are like, why isn't this 100% accurate, at all times? And, the understanding of that is that, there's human error, that's an aspect of it. There's also technical error, where, technology is coming to play and something comes in, and it's formatted wrong. It's all about trying to minimize that level of error, right? And what that percentage of error you're willing to, in every business is different. It's like, what are you willing to say, I'm okay with this level of error? And that's something like as a business, you kind of ultimately need to decide on, because that's what I mean by that focus and that end result, because it's like on a revenue KPI, you're not willing to have a large, if any, level of error. Whereas on the number of sessions on a web page, you're willing to have a certain amount of error potentially. And so, it depends on what the level of data is that you're looking at. Are you looking at, is it an enterprise level client or commercial? Are you looking at just a page view or session? Are you looking at the medium or source, or what are you looking at and what are you trying to get at? That will tell you the level of or room for error that you're willing to work at. But I think what I always emphasize is that you're only going to get to that level of error that you're willing to live with by documenting out exactly what you are trying to measure, what's your end result, and then measuring, and also putting in exactly what you're trying to track. So, Mike, you had mentioned, like, is it a Boolean? Is it a text field? Is it getting to that level of granularity is what you need to do. And it's a sucky exercise. Everybody hates like going through that exercise, but I almost see it as like almost a spreadsheet, but Snowplow has like this data product studio, right? And it's a way for us to provide that visibility to others and empower others to understand the data. And so it goes into that granularity in giving context of, the event that you're tracking, what is it, the why behind it, et cetera. So that when people are looking at those fields in your CRM or your marketing automation platform or a BI tool, you know what those fields mean, you know where it's getting collected from, you know what you're trying to get from that data. And that's what's most important. And so then once you have everybody aligned, there's less room for error because everybody is aligned and there's that visibility across different teams and across the organization. It's kind of creating that data-driven culture,
Hey everyone, Mike Rizzo here, CEO of MarketingOps.com and co-host of OpsCast. I've got a little secret to share with you, something that's been one of the best kept perks of our community until now. At MarketingOps.com, we've built a hiring program that's changing the game for marketing operations recruitment, and we're finally sharing it with the world. Our community is over 22,000 strong, and within that, we have over 4,400 members who are actively and passively seeking new opportunities. These are seasoned professionals with skills and experience spanning platforms like HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, and so much more. Plus, we can help you fine-tune your outreach, targeting exactly the right candidates by region, years of experience, seniority level, or even agency experience. But here's the real cherry on top. When you hire through our program, your new team member gets a free membership or a virtual ticket to our annual conference. From day one, they're not just stepping into a new role, they're getting access to the training, networking, and support they need to hit the ground running. So if you're ready to unlock this incredible opportunity, it's time to let this secret out. Visit marketingops.com and find your next star teammate today. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep optimizing. Yeah, I love that, and it's an exciting time to be in this field in general. I think largely because we've all gone through the hurdle of fumbling through really bad data architecture, and we're now getting to a place where we realize, RevOps as a category is becoming a thing, right? And we're trying to align all these different operational partners in the business across sales and support and you name it, right? Finance. And when you talk about, the sources of truth, it's everything from the type of field and the data that actually lives in that field, right? And then where you as a business, right, are saying, hey, very concretely, an example is we have a customer on file, right? And the name of that customer's company record and their physical address it starts in the CRM, right? It started there because that's how the sale started, right?
Right.
Once it ends up becoming a customer and finance has it, and there's a billing activity that happens, inevitably you will get a corrected set of data because you have to invoice them to the right place.
Right.
And that billing address is now different and it lives in a totally separate, system.
Well, I wouldn't I wouldn't even use the word corrected. Like it's another data point, right? Because
it is another right. It is another data point, right? Yes, that's right, Hartman. Right. It's another data point.
I love this. Like keep it coming. Like, yes, you're right. I love this.
It is an additional point that typically or historically has lived outside of the go-to-market, stack. And now we're saying, hey, that's a problem. Because when we go to reconcile and try to understand who are our best customers, who renews most, who adds on more services or products, and all of the questions, to try to reconcile that information when you don't have it actually coming back in from the finance side of things or standardized, or you're saying, hey, that's where we look for this information. Like that, this is what's exciting, is that we now have systems out there to help us do that. Right. And we're all aware of the fact that we need to go find the systems to help us do that, which historically we were not doing a very good job of. So,
well, I mean, before it was like everybody was kind of working in their silos, looking at all their data separately, and doing their things. Right. And now, because there's larger business initiatives to do like AI recommendation engines, or like do something within the product that, like as somebody becomes a customer, utilizing their past history to, do different things within the product. Now it's becoming more and more important for companies to have that like single source of truth, like that full customer view, that 360. And so it's not just about the beginning funnel for like marketing stuff. It's not just about the finance data. It's not just about the sales data separately now. Now it's like looking at the full journey across the whole board. And so that's where, a lot of people are turning to like data warehouses or lake houses to like consolidate and rectify that and reconcile all of that data. And so when you have all of these different sources and you're bringing them into the warehouse, like some people use like CDPs and they, have a variety of different things going in, but it's kind of this black box per se. And, what I like to make sure people understand is that if you're really looking to try to get data, quality data, and you're looking to get that single source of truth, you need to make sure that you have an understanding of where it's coming from, how it's being modeled, how is it being enriched, getting that context, where is all that information coming from? And so you need to have that foundation and that platform that can do that. And so
transparency is really critical, right? So you're not spending your time explaining how this stuff comes into there. And to me, I hear a number of people, and I probably said it myself, where you say like, oh, we can't start doing that kind of reporting because our data is terrible. And I kind of keep coming back to this, my view, right, that it's never going to be perfect. So what I've found when I start doing reporting, even a little bit, is that it uncovers the things that you didn't expect, or your assumptions that were incorrect about how a process worked or people worked. And it gives you a chance to go clean that up, right? And then your data over time gets better by exposing it and making it available to others. If we can move on a little bit. So at Snowplow, you guys work with a lot of marketing organizations and kind of see how they approach data and insights and all that. When you think about data that marketers or marketing ops teams could potentially get a hold of, because we talked about this, right? Maybe you don't need everything, and capture that and do something with it. Like, what are the major categories you're thinking about? And then, what are some of the like challenges that you see with those?
Yeah, sure. So, I do look at it across like a few different categories, I'd say. So you have like your behavioral analytics, which is, looking at the interactions that people are having, your touch points, your standard like clicks and page views, or maybe even video viewership and like how long you view something for, how much scroll depth you've had on the page, those types of things. So like I encompass that into your behavioral like analytics. And then you have your targeting and segmentation. So like how are you slicing and dicing that data to then target an email or target your advertising, and segment that out, Then third is probably your personalization, I'd say, I say that lightly because personalization can be taken in a bunch of different ways, right? And when
isn't that just putting someone's first name in an email?
that's what everybody seems to think, at least.
How hard can that be?
It's the most painful thing.
Or you end up getting those emails that still have the token in place, where it's like the first name's not
Moops.
even.
We call that a moops.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like you have your personalization, and when I say that, I mean like when somebody does an action, taking that data and doing something with it to give them a better experience. So, whether they do something on your website or app or whatever, making sure that the next thing that they do, you're meeting them where they're at in their journey. So, whether that be an email that is triggered because of an action that they took, or maybe it is content that's recommended to them on the website in real time. So that's another aspect. And then you have your optimization. So taking and analyzing all of the data that you have and optimizing your ad spend or your website performance, making sure that it's, more optimized for conversion, looking at that CRO, all of that information. So the biggest hoops that I see across those kind of 4 pillars, I guess you'd say, is like from a behavioral analytics perspective, it's, what do you track? Can you make sure it's deduplicated so that there's no like, crazy amounts of clicks on something, maybe bot traffic, all of that stuff. From a targeting and segmentation perspective, some of the big hurdles I see is making sure that once again, you've set up all of your models or your fields accordingly so that you can segment out that data. So like take a title, for instance, of somebody. Companies have their titles in all different ways. I mean, recently I saw like somebody at the same at a different company, but the same title. It's like one is, let's say, director of business operations, and another one is an SDR, but they do exactly the same function. It's just that one company is giving like a larger title for, something that you would typically see like a director is like an actual director role. But at the company, they've named it differently so that they can show like this ownership aspect of things, or maybe they put in different keywords or ways of segmenting, whether it's MarTech, is it marketing technology, is it MarTech, is it, how do they word things? And so being able to figure out how you're going to slice and dice that data and categorize it is really important. And I think that's the biggest thing that people struggle with that category. And then personalization, I'd say, how to not be creepy, but also be helpful, like for instance, when you're shopping, right. And you have a brand that, maybe you're shopping for a couch, and then you see an ad that is advertising a cup holder, like cover for your, arm of your couch chair. It's like, oh yeah, like I need to deck out my couch with throw pillows, or this cup holder that maybe I probably don't need to spend money on, but I probably should because I'm, I love shopping. And, or maybe like this throw blanket that matches the colors in my room or whatever. And it's like, how can you personalize the advertisement or the email that you're getting and things like that? And, AI can come into play there too, where it's like analyzing what you're looking at, the color schemes of the images that you're looking at, what are the sizes of the couches you're looking at, those types of things, and play that into the recommendations that you're getting to make it even more helpful.
See, and that stuff really matters, right? Like,
right.
On when you say, things like, the sizes of the couches that you're looking at, or the style and all that stuff, right? I got to spend just a brief a brief stint at a digital asset management company, and I learned a lot about taxonomies and the way in which assets like that are, the metadata that's put in on those products, right? Or the images and all that other stuff. Those standards, the process by which you establish a taxonomy and a standardized approach to storing information has been around for quite some time. And, to our point in this episode so far, like B2B, for whatever reason, just like missed the boat. Like they missed the boat when it came to setting like taxonomies and data standards. And so, your AI, right, like to your point, right? It can do a great job. But if you didn't have that metadata on file for this couch is X amount of inches long and wide and deep and blah, 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 it's never going to be able to do that. Right. And you have to have those standards in place for these systems to actually do anything of real meaningful value, which is what's kind of like, again, I said earlier, it's like exciting to be in this space right now. Mm-hmm. That's a really exciting thing, is that, marketing operations, revenue operations, whatever title, speaking of titles, whatever title you want to give yourself, you are just in this really awesome place. Like everybody's like, hey, I want to be seen as a more strategic, team player and all this stuff, right? I want to be pulled into the conversations earlier. It's like, what's the phrase? I feel like I should ask the Texan in the room, grab the bull by the horns. I don't know if that's from Texas or somewhere else. But.
we'll claim it.
You'll claim it. But it's like, grab that, by the horns and run with it. Right. Because and this is a talk track that's been coming from Paul Wilson in our community. Like, it is not me, it is all of us talking about this. You have a huge opportunity to show your company and your teams the art of the possible by saying, hey, by laying this really solid foundation in the way we think about our data and our data architecture is going to enable us to do all of this other kind of stuff with AI. Because the AI is only as good as what's being fed into it. Right. So,
and there's where that aspect of garbage in, garbage out comes from, So if you're putting in, garbage taxonomies and things of that nature, well, guess what? The recommendations are going to be like, oh, you're buying a couch? Well, let's show you a microwave. And it's like, oh, that's less than helpful. Like, I don't.
See, here's what I believe now that we've all been talking about couches, is that these devices that are all listening to us, we're all going to start getting ads for couches and chairs.
That is true, actually. That is 100% true. I'm for sure going to get some sort of ad for a couch now.
Yes.
Because we're talking about this.
Maybe I should have talked about cars or something fun that maybe you want.
No, the couch is more suitable. Like I'll take the couch ad.
I can think of lots of other things that would have been more problematic. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm glad that I could do something that you guys are
for sure. Okay, so you hinted at this a little bit, Adrianna, is the idea of operationalizing data and maybe like data as a product, which Mike, I'm sure you'll like, because you keep talking about how the marketing ops is really kind of like product management. But you missed a guest actually, I think recently, where I was like, oh, my Mike would have been here like when I told you so.
That's okay. I'll say it now. Yeah, I told you so.
Yeah. So Adrianna, like what you use that phrase, like operationalizing data as a product, right? So what is it like? What does that mean? Right. I think I have an idea, but I could be just as likely to be right or wrong.
Yeah. When I think of data as a product, it's like a long-term, like valuable asset for your company. It's something that requires continuous development, maintenance, refinement, making sure that it's getting the same level of attention, time, resourcing that you would look at as a product, right? Because ultimately you're using that data to steer your business and where you're going and making decisions off of that. And so if it's not a staked in time type of thing. It's something that's always evolving, always adding to it. all of those things. So I'm actually kind of curious, Mike, you know, data as a product, what's your take on it? You know, like what you seem a little excited about that as a topic. So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, so data for me, so there's two things. What Hartman was talking about a second ago is that I'm a big advocate for this notion that when I did a post a handful of months ago and I said marketing ops isn't marketing, and everybody was like, "What are you talking about?" A lot of it was really around the idea that we do need to create a little bit more of a guardrail around, like, let's not just lump it into the broader category of marketing. Let's think about it as what its unique value really is. If you want to be seen as strategic, that's so, like, let's talk about it differently. Let's not just talk about it as broad stroke marketing.
Yeah.
And then I have further expanded upon that point to say that really, I think in a lot of ways, you are a lot like a product manager. Your product is just made up of many products, and your job is to figure out how to deploy features and functionality to best enable your customers to buy from you and your team to engage with those customers all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So there's that part of it, and I'll come back off of my little pedestal there. But then on the data product side, I love the idea of data products. And it's near and dear to my heart because I run a community that's just like filled with great information, right? Like we have tons of data coming into our system, and I'm constantly looking for ways to enable our community with that information.
Yeah.
You know, so you think about us as like this sort of let's call it, for lack of a better term, the buzzword of like a thought leadership brand, right? So marketingops.com, if I, just by way of like really concrete example, I tasked somebody recently with, hey, our job board is kind of broken right now. Got to fix it. And then posting jobs, like, just like, we got to fix that part. But like, let's go fetch some job data that, you know, and like just feed the board, because that'll help people find new career opportunities. Like, that's a win. And then I went further with that person and I said, but as you do this, can we store the information in our own data tables so that I could start to tell a story to the community about which industries are hiring or not? What's the average tenure? What kind of information of value can I point back to our community around the data around the job market? That is a data product that is its own little tiny niche category within the niche of marketing operations, right? And so that's what excites me about data products, is like, when you start doing industry research like we do, State of the MoPro, and you've got 4 years running of the same type of questions happening over and over again, you've now, like, the research is a product, but the data that supports it, that's a data product, right? And I can repurpose that and create more value back into the market by treating it like a first-class product, right? So, yeah.
It's about like compiling it too. You know, it's like, where are you getting that from? And, you know, ultimately, like, what are you trying to give to people? You know, like, what are you trying to do? But yeah, it's like, you know, from my perspective, it's like, you know, you want to try to create like a structured process. And, you know, like you said, with product management, you know, it's like everything is about kind of process. Like, how are we bringing this to market? What is, you know, what's going into the product? What is the data that you're going to be using to understand what you should be building, and things of that nature? You know, like, my favorite analogy is like shelfware, and there's a lot of tools that are out there that you know, I call my products. You know, it's like, because every tool you have to kind of manage as its own thing, and then bring it all together and reconcile it. And there's a lot of shelfware out there because, you know, a lot of companies, you know, they have one marketing ops person or maybe just a few, and there's so many different things that you're managing. And so when you think about shelfware, you know, it's like, it's sitting there, it's collecting all of this information, but you don't have anybody to operationalize it or to actually like take it and do something with it. And so the reason that I like to look at data as a product is because you don't want it to just sit there and rot. because
this is exactly what I was alluding to at the beginning. Like, this is the missed opportunity, right? You've got this data that could be valuable, and for a variety of reasons, right? Some of it's just lack of time, lack of resources, lack of the tools and knowledge and expertise to do something with it, right? All those play a role in it. But at the end of the day, right, you've got this data that could be valuable to the organization, and you're not getting to use it. And this is why, I did a white paper about marketing B2B measurement for the community, and operational data was the first sort of part of it for me, because I think what happens is nobody sees the impact of poor operational sort of data systems and processes until it's downstream and it's too late to do anything about it. So we just had another guest on, simply was like, I want to be able to quickly ask the question to my ops team, right? How many customers do we have? And I was like, I cringed, because that's the hard question to answer in almost every place I've been, partially because there's no definition, right? Is it a person? Is it a company? Is it a location of a company? Is it a division? Like, all those things, so unless you have a definition, but then it's not there the way you want it. Yeah. So the more you can clean up, what I was trying to do is help people sort of build a case for, I need to, as a marketing ops, MarTech, whatever, RevOps person, I need to be able to, I need to carve out part of my bandwidth to not just doing things like building emails and doing segmentation, but also making sure our data operations are working as well as they could be, or at least continuing to make progress towards getting better. And because I told a boss of mine one time, we really need to work on this. It's not sexy. She's like, no, it's sexy. I was like, oh, I was ecstatic, right? Okay, good. Yeah. You see it too, but I don't know that most leaders see it that way.
Well, most people see marketing operations as like a tactical thing. And if you're not using marketing operations as a strategic thing, you're going to be in trouble long term. I mean, I'm putting my marketing operations hat on. You need to almost be futuristic and try to plan for all the things that you need to solve for in the future when you're implementing something, right? So you go and you get tasked with this thing, but it's they're like, why did you set it up that way? Well, someday you may want this from it. Someday you may want this from it. Someday you may want to do X, Y, Z. And so we almost have to put this crystal ball hat on to understand what could we possibly be asked in the future to create or do with this thing, and setting it up from the beginning so that we have that flexibility and that scalability, really.
I was trying inside of our recording studio here for our listeners, there's these little media features you can do. I was trying to find the clapping thing. So I was I wanted to clap. We don't ever use them, but I wanted to do it and it's not working. So anyway. Imagine
sounds like operator error, Mike. I don't know.
Imagine cheering and clapping sounds in the background for that one. I love it.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you a little bit here, Adrianna, because what you just described, I agree with. We should be thinking in the future, but at the same time, earlier we talked about the importance of thinking through, like Mike said, begin with the end in mind, right? And so, how do you have any, or your team at Snowplow, do you have any guidance or suggestions about how to help our audience who might be going, oh yeah, we need to define what data points we need and how to get them, and maybe prioritize because we only have limited bandwidth, so we can only address part of it. How do they go about that? Because otherwise, I think it does lead to, we just need to go get this massive amount of data and just suck it all in somewhere, and then it just sits there.
Yeah. So I typically take a tiered approach, I guess you could say, and trying to understand exactly what types of data, because you need you have different levels, right? You have your key business objectives. What do you need to inform? You have your revenue, your opportunities, let's say, your sales qualified leads, your marketing qualified leads, how many prospects entered the database, all of those things. Those are kind of your high level KPIs, or maybe it's purchase, for a B2C company, maybe it's the purchases or the return purchases, or the returns that happened on a purchase, all of those things. So categorizing as what's your first priority of data, from a top, executive level. And then then you go more granular, like what caused those MQLs to go into the funnel? What make up those MQLs? What made up that purchase? Where did they come from? What was the source, the medium, the action that they took? Was there an event that they, went to? Was there a sale that you had on your website? What was it that ultimately got them to convert? And defining that. And so that's from a marketing perspective, but from even a product perspective, you could look at it from a standpoint of, what actions are they taking within the product in order to get them to repeat purchase or to become a loyalty member or something of that nature. And then going even a level deeper from that. And, it's like, what are the different roles that are doing these things? What are the psychographics behind that? Are they, and you can look at kind of their intent and the way that they're coming in, and maybe they're more of a, I had a company that I used to work for. It's like some folks would come in from our advertising from like a DraftKings or a, like an online app or within their personal life, like let's say, so like the things that they're doing within their personal life, they'd click on an ad and then they go to the business website. But then there's some people that will come in from like social media, or there's some people that will come in from an article that they're reading. There's different ways that people are consuming this information. So if you can segment out those different types of behavior and categorize them around kind of how people are consuming that information, that's like a whole nother level. So it's like, if you don't have that top layer information to know overall, how is the business doing? How are you doing in order to grab that information? And is it the right people that are coming in as MQLs? Because, a lot of marketing and sales teams, they struggle because it's like marketing is just like, well, here you go. And for our listeners, you can't see me, but I'm tossing something over a wall. It's like, well, here you go. Here's your stuff.
So true.
And so then it's like, go ahead, sales, you have to try to, make something of this. But it's like, well, are they truly the right people? And then you're remarketing to these people. So it's like, is your targeting up front, the accurate targeting? Are you really reaching the people that are going to buy? So it's like, you have to kind of, it's chicken and egg, so it's like, if you're bringing in MQLs and they're not the right person, and then you're retargeting them so that you can try to get more purchases out of them, and it's just hitting a stall, you're never going to get anywhere. Yeah. So it's this, aspect of trying to understand the beginning.
Horrible cycle of,
I just hear like a toilet flushing, right? And that toilet is money, right? It's just going away.
Yeah, totally. And I honestly, I think it just further emphasizes the point. So I was on a podcast yesterday and they were like asking me the question, like, when is it ever too early to hire a marketing operations person? I was like, well, obviously I'm biased, but generally speaking, no. Right. Yep. And like this illustrates the point, right? If you are a leader trying to go to market and you want to put emphasis on moving fast, you might hire someone that is more demand gen oriented, that has perhaps a background in marketing operations, but they're going to skew heavily towards the demand gen side, which you're going to love because you'll be like, great, we can move fast and try things and try to generate leads. And that's going to be great.
It's highly visible stuff, right? Stuff that's going into the market, emails, ads,
it's like, et cetera, I see, like they're doing the things, right? But if you hire the marketing operations person or maybe that person skews more on the ops side, they're going to slow down to speed up. Right. And that unfortunately just needs to become that needs to become more of the norm.
Yes.
Where ideally organizations say, hey, we do need to slow down to speed up, because beginning with the end of in mind, right? By the end of this outcome of this test or this audience that we're trying to get purchases from or what have you, you don't want to end up in a place where marketing is pointing to sales and sales is pointing to marketing, and they're both saying that one isn't doing what the other is supposed to be doing, et cetera, because no one sat down and agreed that this is how we want to define what success looks like. And we didn't put any of the data in place to be able to do that.
Yep.
Right. And so slow down to speed up, folks. Like, sorry if you're a demand gen marketer and you wish that you were the first hire, like, go be more of an ops person and slow down to speed up. Right. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like how maybe this is a counter example, but like I hear regularly about the value of having things like habits or simplifying like the outfits you wear, things like that, because it makes your ability to be. People will take the like. Like having habits, like takes some. They think, oh, it takes creativity out of what you do, but it actually has the opposite effect because you're not thinking about things that are day to day decisions that you don't have to think about anymore. It leaves more capacity to be creative in other realms.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think I'm so creative, Hartman? I wear a hat every day. Like, I have way more time to be creative, right? Obviously.
Exactly, for sure.
I'm being facetious, people. I'm being facetious. But I do have like a rotation of 5 shirts that I wear, to be fair. So
Are they all black?
No, they do change colors at least.
They change colors.
But they are plain colored shirts from Target. So,
easy stuff. Well, hey, one more thing, and then we're probably gonna have to wrap up here. But again, kind of going with the experience and exposure you have at Snowplow with many clients. Are there any stories of Mike will know that I hate the term best practices, but best practices or examples of where you see people be successful at doing this operationalizing data? My God, that took me how many times to get out?
I don't know. Fast. Operationalizing. That's a hard one.
And I speak too fast.
Yeah, there's a few different, areas that I'd say are good examples. I think there's 2 that I like to share the most. And, don't get me talking on this, I'll talk forever, but it's like, optimizing your ad spend and optimizing like ad tech platforms with the data that you have. That's one of them. And then the other one is like the personalization aspect of it and kind of that real time personalization. So I'll talk through like the ad tech area for a second. Is that, a lot of companies, they have their Google ads and like Google spend, right? And they're tracking, how many conversions they get. Is that a form submit? Is it a checkout, on a e-commerce site? Is it a demo request on a B2B site? They have those typical conversions. And, we all know that we get spam submissions on a variety of things. We get bots that come to our website. And so if you keep it at that high level, those high level conversion points, Google is going to optimize off of all of those, regardless if they're good or bad. And so I'm a big advocate for connecting, that data into your ad platforms and funneling as much data and conversion points into those ad platforms that you can, from top of funnel of like, did they click on a certain section on your pricing page to look at like a particular section, or all the way down funnel to, did they, schedule a meeting with somebody, or did they, add more than one thing to their cart, or, very granularly, all of those actions that you would say lead to a successful journey. So, once you have all those data points that are in somebody's journey that you would say are valuable to your company, and there's a little bit of analysis that you have to do on your customer journey there. But once you have all those points and you funnel them into your ad tech platforms, the more that the algorithm and the machine learning that's running those ad tech platforms can take those data points and optimize, and make sure that they're optimizing the spend, because they know exactly who you want to come through. And so the more that you have those data points, and not just the arbitrary things that are very, very down funnel, but everything, the more you can funnel that in, the more it can optimize. Right?
I think your point about like Google doesn't really by itself differentiate, right? Between those visitors is huge. And so the second one you talked about was oh gosh, no, I'm going blank already.
Real-time
The
personalization.
personalization. Yeah.
Yeah. So from a content recommendations perspective, you have like somebody comes to your website, and there's like a lot of different platforms that try to do this. Is that somebody comes to your website, they try to understand who that person is, are they valuable to you? And then they try to serve up, is it a demo? Is it a chat with like a certain message? Is it a pop-up with a certain sale? Is it a piece of content that they need to read, or like a webinar, or something of that nature? And so all of that being said, you need to make sure that you have that real-time aspect of things to then get it into a platform's hands to be able to ingest that and operationalize it. And so there are several like e-commerce, gaming and gambling companies that are doing this type of thing. You look at some of our customers like our Burberry or Charlotte Tilbury, or those are a lot of like e-commerce platforms, or Strava, for instance, from a fitness perspective. So you look at those companies, and they're really trying to do the best they can with their data and, operationalize it, as well as, optimize their spend so that they're becoming more efficient. So
That's interesting.
yeah,
Wow.
I'd probably say those are the two most interesting use cases that I
Love
like.
it. Yeah, that's great. Adrianna, thank you so much for this. If folks are interested in learning more about you or what Snowplow is up to and how it might help them, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat. And then also go to snowplow.io. Check us out, and feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to chat and answer any questions you may have.
Fantastic. Again, Adrianna, thank you so much for sharing. This has been a fun conversation. I feel like we could have gone on for another hour. Mike, as always, good to have you here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
I know you've got to run soon, so we'll let you go. But as always, to our listeners out there, thank you for continuing to support us and giving us your input. If you have suggestions for topics or guests, or you want to be a guest, then just reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me, and we will be happy to talk to you about that. Until next time, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.